This exact leaf can stop a goat's heart or completely paralyze a chicken's digestive system in less than 6 hours. The terrifying part, it's probably growing along your fence line right now, and some of the most watched homesteading videos on this platform are actively telling you it's safe. It is not. Search online and you'll find thousands of creators saying, "Don't worry, animals naturally avoid what's bad for them." That is a dangerously false myth. Domesticated livestock do not have the wild survival instincts that wild animals develop over generations. When they are bored, when summer heat dries out their pasture, or when you hand-feed them garden scraps, they will eat these toxins. And by the time the symptoms appear, it is usually too late for a field intervention to save them. In this video, we are not using vague scare tactics. We are looking at the exact chemical compounds inside 3 common backyard plants, correcting specific misinformation spread on popular forums, and giving you the precise veterinary symptoms to watch for in chickens, goats, and rabbits. We will also cover the only emergency protocol that veterinary toxicologists actually recommend. Let's begin with the most common garden vegetable scrap, one that is secretly a neurological time bomb sitting in your compost bin right now. Plant number 1 is from the Solanaceae family, which includes tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, and their wild cousins. Specifically, we are talking about the leaves, green vines, and unripe fruit of these plants. To most backyard growers, a spent tomato vine at the end of the season looks harmless. It's dry, it's brown, the season is over, so they clip it, toss it into the pen, and let the chickens pick at it. Here is the myth that kills livestock every season. The internet will tell you, if the vine is dried, the toxins are gone. Farmers repeat it in forums. Popular gardening channels film themselves throwing spent tomato vines directly into chicken coops. That advice is wrong, and the chemistry explains why. The compounds responsible are solanine and chaconine, 2 heat-stable glycoalkaloids concentrated in the leaves, stems, and green parts of all Solanaceae plants. Heat-stable means exactly what it sounds like. Drying, wilting, boiling, or composting does not break down these compounds. They remain chemically intact and biologically active inside dried plant material. Inside an animal's body, solanine acts through 2 simultaneous mechanisms. First, it destroys the mucosal lining of the gastrointestinal tract, the protective layer that allows nutrients to absorb and prevents pathogens from entering the bloodstream is stripped away. Second, and this is the mechanism that causes the neurological symptoms, solanine is a potent acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. It prevents the enzyme responsible for shutting off nerve signals from functioning. The nervous system gets locked in an on state. Muscle contractions do not stop. For chickens specifically, the first target is the crop, the muscular pouch at the base of the neck where food is held before digestion. Solanine causes complete crop stasis. The smooth muscles of the crop stop contracting. Food cannot move forward. The crop becomes a sealed, warm environment where ingested material ferments and rots in place. This triggers systemic sepsis. The infection spreads from the crop into the bloodstream. The bird will appear lethargic, stand with its neck stretched forward or hunched, and stop eating. The crop will feel doughy, bloated, and warm to the touch. For goats and sheep, the mechanism shifts toward the rumen. The solanine compounds alter the pH and destroy the microbial colonies that make rumen fermentation possible. Without those microbes, fermentation produces CO2 gas at an uncontrolled rate. The result is frothy, severe bloat. The rumen distends on the left flank of the animal, becomes hard to the touch, and the animal shows acute distress, grinding teeth, kicking at the belly, refusing to stand. Diarrhea follows, typically dark or black in color due to gastrointestinal tissue damage. Identification rule is simple. Any member of the Solanaceae family, tomato, potato, eggplant, pepper, or tomatillo, has leaves, vines, and unripe fruit that carry these compounds. Green potato skins and sprouted potato flesh carry the highest concentration. Never put these into a pen. Never add them to compost that animals can access. The fruit itself, when fully ripe and red, carries lower levels, but the plant material is never safe for livestock. Keep it out of reach entirely. The second plant category kills through a completely different mechanism, one that targets the heart directly. We are talking about plants containing cardiac glycosides and cardinolides, milkweed, oleander, foxglove, and lily of the valley. For backyard livestock keepers, milkweed and oleander are the most commonly encountered. And there is a myth attached to these plants that has become so widespread, it repeats on almost every homesteading forum you can find. The myth: leave the milkweed for the monarch butterflies. Your animals will naturally hate the bitter, milky sap and avoid it. This advice is half correct and half lethal. When fresh pasture is lush, most livestock do avoid milkweed because the white sap is bitter and acts as a deterrent. But that deterrent disappears under one specific condition, and that condition is exactly what happens on most homesteads in late summer and fall. When milkweed is mowed, clipped, or simply dries out naturally, it wilts. When it wilts, the bitter-tasting latex compounds evaporate and degrade. The white sap disappears. The plant material becomes palatable. It tastes like ordinary dried grass. But the cardiac, the molecular toxins embedded in the plant tissue, do not degrade. They remain 100% chemically stable in wilted, dried, and even baled plant material. A goat that ignores fresh milkweed will eat wilted milkweed without hesitation. Here is the physiology. Cardiacs bind to the sodium-potassium at pace pump, the protein embedded in every cardiac muscle cell that regulates the ion exchange required for each heartbeat. When this pump is blocked, calcium accumulates inside the heart muscle cells. The cells cannot relax between beats. The result is uncontrolled, sustained cardiac muscle contraction, progressing from irregular heartbeat to ventricular fibrillation to cardiac arrest. The lethal dose for oleander is documented in veterinary toxicology literature at less than 0.05% of an animal's body weight in dry leaf material. For a 150-pound goat, that is less than 35 grams, roughly a small handful of dried leaves. Death can occur within 2 to 4 hours of ingestion. For cattle, the threshold is similar. The mechanism is the same. The margin between ate some and dead is extremely narrow. For rabbits, the response is even faster. Rabbits show immediate respiratory distress, rapid, shallow breathing. This is followed by foaming at the mouth, loss of muscle coordination, and cardiac arrest. With rabbits, there is almost no window between first symptoms and death. There are no warning signs that allow time for intervention. The eradication protocol for milkweed and oleander requires more than mowing. Mowing creates exactly the wilted clippings that become dangerous. The only safe method is manual removal. Dig the root system out completely, bag the plant material in sealed bags, and remove it entirely from your property. Do not compost it. Do not leave clippings in or near any animal area. The third plant does not kill in hours. It does not kill in days. It operates over weeks, even months, dismantling the animal's nervous system from the inside while the animal appears, by all visible signs, to be perfectly fine. This is bracken fern, Pteridium aquilinum, and it is the most commonly misread poisonous plant in backyard livestock keeping. The myth that keeps keepers complacent: my animals have been nibbling on those ferns all spring, and they are perfectly healthy, so it must be safe. This is exactly how bracken fern works. It does not trigger acute symptoms. There is no immediate warning, and that absence of symptoms is what makes keepers confident and continues the exposure right up until irreversible neurological damage becomes visible. Bracken fern contains 2 distinct toxic compounds. The first is Thiaminase, an enzyme that actively destroys vitamin B1, also called thiamine, inside the animal's gastrointestinal system. The second is tacryloside, a carcinogenic compound documented to damage bone marrow and cause a condition called enzootic hematuria in cattle, where blood vessels hemorrhage into the bladder over time. For the purposes of backyard livestock, chickens, goats, and rabbits, thiaminase is the primary acute concern. Thiamine, vitamin B1, is not stored in large quantities in the body. It is required continuously for glucose metabolism in the brain. Every neuron in the animal's central nervous system depends on a constant supply of thiamine to produce cellular energy. When thiaminase destroys thiamine faster than the animal can absorb it from food, the brain cells responsible for motor function and spatial orientation begin to starve and die. This process is silent until the reserves are nearly depleted. In goats and sheep, the result is a condition called polioencephalomalacia, commonly called goat polio, which is a misleading name because it has nothing to do with the poliovirus. It describes the softening and swelling of brain tissue caused by thiamine deficiency. The first visible symptoms are subtle. The animal seems dull, slightly uncoordinated, slower to respond. Then the symptoms escalate. The most specific sign is stargazing. The neck pulls backward toward the spine, locking the animal's head up and back toward the sky. The animal cannot bring its head forward. Blindness follows as the optic centers of the brain lose function. For chickens, Thiaminase poisoning presents differently. The first measurable sign is a drop in egg production, often attributed to seasonal changes or nutritional gaps, which is exactly why it goes undetected. As thiamine reserves continue to fall, the bird develops muscle tremors, particularly in the legs and wings. The tremors progress to complete loss of leg function. The bird cannot stand. It may lie on its side with legs extended and paddling. Without intervention, death follows. Bracken fern spreads by underground rhizomes. Visible above-ground fronds are only part of the plant. The root system extends in all directions, often crossing under fence lines into clean pasture zones. Removing only the visible fronds does not stop the plant. The rhizomes must be excavated and removed from the soil, or a targeted herbicide program must be applied according to your local agricultural extension guidelines. Before we cover the protocol, we need to correct one more piece of advice that circulates constantly in livestock keeping communities, and that gets animals killed. The advice: if you think your animal has been poisoned, force-feed them water or milk immediately. Do not do this. Here is why this is lethal. Solanine and cardiac poisoning both cause neurological disruption. One of the first neurological functions to be compromised is the swallowing reflex, the coordinated contraction of the pharyngeal and esophageal muscles that moves food and liquid safely from the mouth down toward the stomach and away from the airway. If you force liquid into an animal whose swallowing reflex is impaired, that liquid does not go to the stomach. It enters the trachea and floods the lungs. This is called aspiration pneumonia. It kills faster than the original toxin. Step 1 of the correct protocol: isolate the animal immediately. Move it to a dark, quiet, cool stall or pen separate from other animals. This matters chemically. Stress hormones, specifically cortisol and adrenaline, accelerate cardiac output and blood circulation. Higher circulation rate means toxins absorbed in the gut reach the heart and brain faster. A calm, dark environment slows this process. Step 2: activated charcoal. Veterinary-grade activated charcoal, administered as a slurry via drench gun or large dosing syringe, is the only field-accessible method for binding unabsorbed toxins in the gastrointestinal tract before they enter the bloodstream. Activated charcoal works through adsorption. The toxin molecules bind to the enormous surface area of the charcoal particles rather than to the gut wall. The bound toxins pass through the system without being absorbed. The window for activated charcoal to be effective is narrow. Veterinary toxicologists generally cite a window of 1 to 2 hours after ingestion before significant systemic absorption has occurred. This means two things. You need activated charcoal in your farm medical kit before an emergency happens, and you need to act the moment you suspect poisoning, not after you've confirmed it. Waiting for a veterinary diagnosis to arrive before administering charcoal often puts you past the effective window. Step 3 applies specifically to bracken fern poisoning and is the one emergency tool that can reverse neurological damage before it becomes permanent. Injectable vitamin B1, thiamine hydrochloride, administered intramuscularly or subcutaneously reverses polioencephalomalacia if given early enough. Thiamine is not a controlled substance and is available through veterinary supply companies. The dosage and route of administration for your specific animal and body weight must be confirmed with your veterinarian before an emergency, not during one. But having a vial on hand and knowing the protocol your vet recommends can be the difference between a recovered goat and a dead one. Step 4: contact your veterinarian immediately. Provide the name of the plant, the estimated amount ingested, the time of ingestion, the animal's species and body weight, and the symptoms currently visible. Your vet may recommend additional interventions, IV fluids for cardiac toxin cases, additional thiamine dosing schedules, or atropine for acetylcholinesterase inhibition. These are clinical interventions, the field steps above Bayou time. They do not replace professional veterinary care. Prevention is straightforward, but it requires a structured audit, not a casual walkthrough. Walk every inch of your fence line, inside and outside, at arm's reach on both sides. You are looking for three things: plants with white or milky sap when broken, plants with trifoliate or compound leaves growing in shaded zones near woodland edges, and any Solanaceae family plants that may have self-seeded from dropped fruit or garden debris. Do this audit at 3 points in the season. Once in early spring before vegetation fully emerges, this is when bracken fern rhizomes are easiest to excavate. Once in midsummer, when milkweed is visibly flowering and easiest to identify. And once in early fall when the growing season ends and you are clearing garden beds. This is the highest risk window for solanine exposure from spent tomato and potato vines. For disposal, every toxic plant material removed from your property goes into a sealed plastic bag, into a trash receptacle, not a compost pile and not a brush pile. Burning is an option for oleander and milkweed if permitted in your area, but the ash still carries residual toxin material and should not be spread where animals can access it. Composting toxic plant material and using that compost in animal grazing areas is a documented route of secondary exposure. Build a simple reference card and laminate it. Post it inside your feed room or barn. The 3 plants, the 3 compound names, the 3 primary symptoms: solanine, crop stasis or rumen bloat; cardiac irregular heartbeat and sudden collapse; Thiaminase, stargazing, blindness and loss of leg control. When you are in an emergency, you will not remember the details from a video you watched 6 months ago. You need a physical reference in front of you. 3 plants, 3 distinct mechanisms. 1 consistent fact: domesticated livestock will not reliably self-select away from these toxins under the conditions that exist on most backyard homesteads. The responsibility for keeping these plants out of your animal's environment belongs entirely to you, not to instinct, not to bitter flavors, not to the idea that small amounts build tolerance. None of those assumptions are biologically accurate. The animals in your care are your responsibility, and the information in this video gives you exactly what you need to act before a crisis occurs. Walk your fence line today. If you have questions about a specific plant you've found on your property, leave it in the comments with your region. And if this video has corrected something you previously believed to be safe, share it with someone who keeps livestock. That is the only call to action that matters here.